Welcome back to our next video on representing data. Today we're going to be focusing our attention on how to draw a number of different types of graphs, in particular a column graph, a bar graph and a dot plot. In this particular video, I want you to only take notes at specific times. There's going to be quite a lot of information coming your way, so please just have a look for the little guy with the pencil, and that will be a bit of a guide as to what I'd specifically like you to write down. There'll be some times in this video where you'll be just watching and listening. Alright, so clearly graphs are a useful way to display our data, and it's a very good visual tool for displaying our data. So we're going to look at some ways to draw some graphs neatly and accurately. We're going to focus our attention at the start on some column graphs. They're probably the ones that you've had the most practice at drawing in the past, but there's a couple of key things that you need to make sure that you include whenever you draw a column graph. That, of course, is a title. I need to make it clear, a title is not column graph. It is a title of the graph that you are drawing. It might be the number of children in a family. It might be the types of cars driving down a road. That is what we mean when we talk about a title. When you are ruling up your axes, notice I said the word rule, you need to make sure that each axis, the numbers on each axis, is going up by an even amount, not just jumping all over the place, and that those axes are clearly labelled, whether it's colour of cars, number of fish, etc. Whatever width you make your columns, make sure that they are all the same width, not columns that are 1 centimetre and then another column that's 2 centimetres, for example. We're going to be focusing also on leaving an even gap in between each column, and this may be quite new to you. So you may be drawing columns that are 1 centimetre wide and then leaving a half a centimetre gap in between that column and the next one, for example. The next thing that I need to make clear is that the first column that you draw should not be right up against that vertical axis. Try making it half a unit or perhaps half a centimetre away from that axis, and then we can read those values quite clearly. Alright, we're going to have a look at constructing a column graph now that is about a vehicle survey. So you could imagine that someone has been standing on a busy road counting the types of vehicles that have been driving down that road for the last 5 minutes or so. The information has already been put into a frequency table for us here, and you can see that we have 5 categories and we've got numbers ranging from 4 through to 63. So I need to make some decisions as to how big I'm going to make this graph, what numbers I need to go up to, and how big I'm going to make the scale. In other words, what I'm going to be going up by on that vertical axis. Okay, so let's have a look at a starting point here. I've decided that I'm going to go up on the left hand side on the vertical axis by tens, so going up by even amounts, 10, 20, 30, etc. Please don't look at the numbers, for example 4, 9, 17, 11 and 63. Don't use those as a judge for what to be putting on your vertical axis. We don't want those numbers placed there, but we want numbers on the left hand side there that we can fit these numbers into nice and evenly or equally as they go up there. Along the bottom you can see I've got the types of vehicles, cars, trucks, buses, motorcycles, bikes, etc. So I have labelled the axes, vehicle type, I've labelled the vertical axis, frequency, and I've used a ruler to draw up my horizontal and vertical axis. So now I'm ready to start constructing the columns. So let's have a look at how that might look now. So there's one that's completed down the bottom. As you can see, the columns are even widths. There is an even spacing in between them, and that first column on the left there doesn't butt right up against the axis. There is a little bit of space there. Okay, the last thing that we need to also make sure that we include, of course, is our title. And we'll write that up there as vehicle survey. It is not appropriate to have the title column graphs. I'm going to ask you to pause the video now, because the things that are written over here on yellow on the left hand side should go into your notes. So let's write those down now. Okay, now those points that you've written down there in yellow are going to be really quite similar for when we draw a bar graph as well. So let's have a look at an example of a bar graph. Now bar graphs are very similar to column graphs, except that we are going to have a number of horizontal bars, not vertical columns, when we draw them. Now what I've got here is a frequency table which gives some information about a variety of different sunscreens and how long in minutes they appear to be effective for. So I'm having a look at those values on the right hand side there and seeing that they range from around 105 up to 180. So I need to think about how big I'm going to make that scale on the horizontal axis this time, and whether I'm going to start at 0 or whether I'm perhaps going to start a little bit higher. So I'm going to show you now what decision I've made. Remember that this is a bar graph, so it will have horizontal bars, and across the top there you can see that I've decided to start at 100 and go up by tens from there. Notice the little squiggly line in here, which shows that there has been a little bit of like a concertina effect going from 0 up to 100. We've squished it together so that we can start our graph in a position which is going to show us more information based on the data that's provided. I'm going to still have to fill in obviously a title and some labels on each axis, but that's my starting point at least, is to decide what I'm going to start at and go up by on that horizontal axis. All right, let's have a look at where to from next. This is my almost completed bar graph. As you can see, I've labelled each axis quite clearly. I've finished labelling the scales going up by tens and of course the categories A through to G, and you can see that I've left nice even spaces in between each of those bars. I need to write a heading on here as well, so it might be the length of time that a sunscreen protects us for, or we might just write down at the bottom here timing of sunscreen protection. Okay, so you can see it's nice and neat. All of the bars are the same width, and this time we have the categories over this side rather than across the bottom. Now you don't need to copy this down, just watch and listen for now. Okay, let's move on now and have a look at dot plots. You may in the past have drawn pictographs or picture graphs. Dot plots are a little bit like that, but they're much simpler in that they just have dots. They don't have pictures of cats or fish or grapes or whatever it is the category is about. So we're going to have a look at how to construct a dot plot, which is showing the ages of students who are attending a night school. So that's a school that perhaps happens after work of an evening. So here's the information that I've got. I've got a number of values there, and as you can see they all seem to range in their 20s. So I'm going to have a go at drawing or constructing a suitable dot plot. So let's have a look over at the right here. First of all, I've had a look at the values and what they range from. The smallest number is 20 and the biggest number is 29. So I've included all of those numbers, as you can see across here. I haven't left any numbers out. I've gone up by an even scale, 20, 21, 22, 23, etc. And you can see that I've also just crossed off and put a dot in for the first one here. The number 25 is over here. Now these vertical lines here would not necessarily be drawn for you, and they probably don't even need to be there. I want you to imagine that there are some vertical lines there. They will help us to construct our dot plot in a way that keeps all of these dots nice and neat and of course vertical on those straight lines. When you do construct your dot plot, make sure that the dots are as close as possible to being the same size, and again that they are evenly spaced. If there is one column that has 4 dots in it and another column that has 4 dots in it, those 4 dots should be of the same overall height. Alright, so down the bottom here you can see we've got our almost completed dot plot. It looks a little bit like a column graph, doesn't it? We could almost go around the outside of those dots and put columns around them. There's no need to, but we could. What do we need on our column graph? Well, on our dot plot, we still need a title. So it might be that we put ages of students up here. And down the bottom here, we just need to say what this is about, and this is about their ages. Up the side here is just the frequency. In other words, how often these things occurred. Okay, so there's our dot plot. Fairly simple. Dots of the same size, evenly spaced, looks a little bit like a column graph at the end. Alright, now again, you don't need to draw this, you're just watching for now. Okay, I'm going to get you to cast your mind back a little bit to one of the earlier videos where we constructed a frequency distribution table that showed us the number of pets that were in each family that we surveyed. I've copied that table onto this slide here, and we're going to use it now to construct our own dot plot which shows this situation. A couple of things before you start, because you're going to have a go at drawing this in a moment. Notice down the bottom is the total 25. You do not have to include this 25 in your dot plot. This is not a frequency, this is showing the total. So you do not need to make your dot plot go up to 25. The highest that we need to make our dot plot go up to, in this case, is 9. Alright, so I'm going to get you to pause the video now and see if you can have a go at drawing your own dot plot which represents this situation now. Alright, let's have a look at the dot plot that you've drawn and see if it looks a little bit like this one that I've constructed here. On the right hand side is that frequency table again, just to remind us of the values that I had to include. Notice up the top there is a clear title for the dot plot, a number of pets per family. Across the bottom there I've got the number of pets. We can write in frequency over here at the side, although some textbooks say that that's not really important. Each dot represents one item, in this case it's one pet. And as you can see, we've got a value of 5 over here where there is nothing representing that number 5. In other words, there were no families that had 5 pets. It's still included, but there is no dot there. I've tried hard to make my circles or my dots the same size and the same space apart, so hopefully you've been able to do this as successfully as I have, maybe even a little better. Okay, so now it's time for you to wrap things up by writing a couple of sentences which summarise this video and of course jotting down a question that you may have. See you next time.